So typically I am the one doing the tech support and everything like that, as well as researcher onboardings and a lot of the presentations like this. I also have my colleague Kristin Maloney on the call with us. She is the customer success manager. So pretty much, if you guys are going to be interacting with the tool in the future, there's a good chance you'll interact with either one of us at some point as well. So yeah, we'll kind of do a general overview of how the product works today. We'll do a bit of an example on how it all works. We'll show you some of the cool things we have kind of up and coming, and some of the newer things we've been working on most recently. But yeah, we'll kind of start from the top and cover the rest of it on our way through. So to begin, of course, TDM Studio is a text and data mining tool. There's kind of three different aspects to the product at the moment. There's the workbench side, which allows you to write your own code, upload your own code, and really do any method of analysis on any of the data sets you create. We'll cover a little bit more about the actual data sets and the data set creation once we get a little further down. There's the metadata export, which is kind of a step down from the workbench, where you can still create really large data sets and you can get access to data from your data sets, albeit this is something you can download to your own computer to do coding against in your own environment, or this is also really compatible with things like Excel or Tableau, any other tabular softwares. And then the easiest to use is the visualization dashboard that we have. So this, you make a data set, it creates 3 visualizations for you, no coding needed. You make the data set and you get the visualizations created. So it's a really good way to get some easy insights into some of the data sets you can create. So we'll cover all those in just a little bit. We just want to highlight some of these again, kind of some of the points I've mentioned already here. The metadata export, you can get easy access to metadata fields from the documents in your data set. You can download these directly to your own computer to use in whatever software you're comfortable with, or in your own coding environment. So yeah, beforehand we did just make some changes to the data set creation. We'll cover these. Basically now it's just easier to search across all of the content you have access to inside of TDM Studio. And you can see here some of the filters that we'll cover in a little bit, but just like a little preview essentially. And to kind of go with that, we've also expanded all of the content in the visualization dashboard. Before it was just kind of the top news content that you have access to over there. We've expanded it to everything. So you can create the same data sets in the workbench as well as in the visualization side of the platform now. And so yeah, let's hop into the platform here. You can start by going to tdmstudio.proquest.com/home. This will bring you to TDM Studio's homepage here. And then to actually create an account, it should be really easy.
And I put the link in the chat too, if you want to create your account and follow
along. So yeah, then of course, all you'll need to do is put your institutional email address in. It should recognize the account that you have here. So you can select the school that you're at, of course, OSU here. Create a quick password, check all the boxes, and hit create account, and you should just get nice, easy access, especially at OSU. Luckily, everyone can get access to an account super easily. So if you're interested at all, highly encourage you to check it out. It's really easy to get logged in and everything.
One thing too, can I note one thing? So we can also add collaborators to your workbench. So anyone can create their own account, but let's say you're working with 3 other people, you could email us and we can get them manually added to your account, as well as researchers from outside of OSU. So again, if you're working with anyone and they want to, if you want to have a shared space, you could just let us know. And I'll put the link. Oh,
Okay, so we'll start on the visualization side of things, and we'll move into the workbench then. Again, like I mentioned, the visualization platform, or the visualization side of the platform, is going to be the easiest to use. You create a data set, and then it makes these nice little visualizations. So to take a quick look at the visualization process and the data set creation itself. So when you go to create a data set, again, the 3 visualizations that you'll be able to pick from here: geographic analysis, topic modeling, and sentiment analysis. And then you'll get into the actual data set creation itself. So again, recently updated, so you'll be searching across all the content you have access to inside of TDM Studio. This is essentially going to be anything that your university subscribes to from ProQuest. And so, yeah, you can see kind of an example up here. You can do simple keyword searching in the search box up here if there's any particular topics you're interested in, as well as you do have publication date filters. You know, if I want a specific publication title, say like New York Times, for example, I can search for individual publications, select the ones that I need, and then I'll just be filtering on those. So we can see, you know, my document count drop down quite a bit there. Source type, document type, all of that's going to be in the UI itself. So really nice and easy to use. But then, of course, you can use other keywords and other search capabilities up here at the top. If you're interested kind of in how all of that works, there is a search tips button over here on the right side. As you can see with the example here, it does support, you know, your Boolean operators and your, you know, the typical things you would expect with search, as well as we do have some field codes, which allows you to search through different aspects of the documents. Like if I were to want to look for specific author names or location as a subject, all manner of things, you'll find a full extensive list again under that search tips link there. So once you do
questions, first off, is there any questions so far? And feel free to put it in the chat, or you know, you can interrupt us at any time. We just want to make sure we address any questions you have. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, if there aren't any questions, just let me know. But yeah, once you get your data set created, then of course, like you'll see here, again, you'll get the 3 different visualizations. So I've made one down here around drinking water and lead and contaminate, again, with a little asterisk here so we can get a couple permutations of the word. So of course, you know, specifically created for an example in particular, if people are familiar with the Flint water crisis. Essentially what we're looking at here then in the visualization is all the different mentions of locations inside of the news articles that I've selected for this. So of course, very, you know, very easy to spot here is that we've got a very populous place like Chicago that seems to have, you know, about 1/3 of the hits that, you know, somewhere kind of out in the middle of nowhere in Michigan has. And so, of course, we can kind of see this just unfold as, of course, the Flint water crisis. So you've got some of the articles that are associated with each bubble here on the right side. So again, this is kind of the point where if you've created a data set and you know, start finding interesting things, you can click on the different points and it'll bring up the articles associated with them. So you can either just read the titles, or if you actually do click on them, it will take you over to the ProQuest main platform. If you wanted to read through the full text of the articles, get a good understanding of what's going on in your data set, that's going to be a possibility there. As well as we've got the time slider down here at the bottom. So of course, if I scroll all the way back to 2004, you know, again, taking kind of a look at Chicago, there are a couple of hits there. And then for the most part, the bubble around Flint has totally disappeared. Whereas then if we, you know, sneak up closer to 2016, 2015, we start to see that increase little by little. And then at some point pretty rapidly. So that's going to be your geographic analysis. It is a nice little interactive map. And again, the bubbles are going to be locations mentioned within the articles themselves. if you're ever curious as to how we identify those, you may be thinking, you know, how does one identify between London, Ontario, and London in the UK? There's this help and learn tab up at the top that'll give you a full walkthrough of how all the visualizations work. We do see this side of the platform used more often in the classroom, more for teaching and learning. So this is a good way to kind of understand how the methods work, potential downfalls of them, you know, why do they work, how do they work, all of that. So you'll get these for each of the 3 visualizations in case you are curious about how we do any of it. The other thing to note with the visualizations, you will get an export data feature. You can export the underlying data to recreate the visualization, as well as some document metadata. So in this case, if I wanted to see, you know, if particular publishers are publishing more about Flint than other ones are, I'd be able to export the data from this visualization. I could see, you know, how frequent the New York Times posts about this versus Chicago Tribune or any other of the publications inside of my data set then, using that export. So to go on to the next one here, we're actually going to change data sets. We're going to be looking at this human rights and civil rights and legislation. We'll take a look at topic modeling now. Topic modeling, of course, is going to identify language inside of the data set that looks familiar, looks like it's correlated with itself, and chart that throughout the data set. So this is a really cool way to get kind of insights into data sets that you do create. And so you can see here the topic words for each topic. So this is, you know, it's not going to be able to explicitly name each topic, but it will give you, you know, the terms that are most strongly correlated with that topic. So you get a good understanding of what each one is about. And then, you know, you'll see how these trend throughout the year. Kind of interestingly, you know, like if we take a look at this one, mentions things about President Trump, administration, House, Obama, Senate, Biden, women, health, Democrats. And of course, around, you know, around election time here, 2016, we do see, you know, quite a spike in this, as I'm sure we would anticipate. And so again, very similar to the geographic analysis. Click on your points, it'll bring up the articles associated with that point, as well as the topic score, just basically telling you how much of that article is correlated with that topic. Of course, you'll get the most relevant articles at the top. So again, if you do want to read through any of these, you'll get all of those. And again, of course, export data is going to be available for this as well. So if you do want to, again, you know, is New York Times posting more about one topic than other publications or anything like that? That's something you could accomplish with that data export. And then last but not least, we've got our sentiment analysis. You may be familiar with sentiment analysis. It could just be positive or negative sentiment analysis, lexicon-based. We use a sentence-based approach in TDM Studio. So this is looking at different emotions, or what is called affective states, to identify what have been labeled as the, you know, basic emotions, essentially. And so again, it's going to, you know, be kind of similar here. It's going to look a little bit familiar to what we were doing earlier, where you've got points. You can see how those trend over time. Again, keeping in mind this is civil and human rights legislation. Interestingly enough, we see anger pretty prevalent as one of the major emotions throughout the data set. And let's see if I pull a couple of these away, so it's a little cleaner to look at. You know, of course, interestingly enough, some of our more negative emotions are going to be the higher ones, the higher frequency emotions that we find throughout the data set. And yeah, so again, export data available for that one as well. But that's the visualization side of the platform. Again, kind of meant to be a little bit introductory, but you should still be able to get some good insights into your data sets using this side of the platform. Yeah, are there any questions at the moment? I think I can pull chat up if needed, but
No
Good for the
questions
moment.
here.
Okay. So yeah, we'll go into the workbench side of the platform now. Again, this is going to require at least a little bit of coding knowledge to fully leverage, but you can write your own code. We do have some code available, so you don't have to write it from scratch. As well as we have, of course, like I mentioned earlier, the metadata export that you'll see on some of the data sets here. So just taking a quick look at this, again, when you get your data set created, you'll be able to download a nice CSV file of a bunch of different metadata fields from each of the documents in your data set. This is going to go directly to your own computer, so you can use this in Excel or Tableau or any other, tabular software in case you don't want to do coding on the platform. So you've got your citation metadata. We see people use this as kind of like a record of their data set in a lot of cases, but you can, of course, do analysis on some of these fields. And then there's the extended metadata, which you'll get everything you get in the citation metadata, plus some extra ones, mostly catered towards like dissertation content, scholarly journal content. But yeah, again, just a quick, easy download to your own computer.
Brennan, we have a question. Can I import my own PDF files in order to do keyword text analysis in TDM?
So all of the content you'll get in TDM Studio is going to come in XML format. So by default, the tools that we have are not going to be able to do that. If you wanted to combine analysis of PDFs with some of the TDM Studio content, you can upload your own files, your own data sets. Of course, you'll have to code out the tools then to do the analysis on those. But everything you'll get through TDM Studio will be in XML text format. So yeah, over here on the workbench, we'll just take a quick look at the data set creation again, just to kind of reiterate that it is going to be the same as it is on the visualization side of the platform. And so here we're going to be looking at an example, particularly around social media and its effects on mental health. So in this case, I could do something like, I want every document that includes the term mental health and social media. We won't get too specific with it. Keep it nice and simple. And so again, I'm going to get a good number of documents here. And so this is, again, like you can see, I've got some dissertations and theses in here. Here's going to be, scholarly journals. I'm assuming at some point there's news articles in here as well. But it is searching across everything I have access to here in TDM Studio. And in particular, let's even see, maybe I'm just interested in the newspapers that I have here. We'll do news as well, and that'll cut us down quite a bit. So now I've got an even smaller data set to work with. So I've created a similar data set like this already, but just to kind of show how the process works. Of course, you hit save data set. If you do use a search query, it will get saved. So if you want to come back later and make any changes to it, you will have your search query available. Give it a quick name, give it a description if you'd like. Once you hit create data set, then it'll start to process that data set. It essentially has to transfer over, transfer all those documents over to your workbench. So it does take a little bit of time, but you can opt into a quick email when your data set is finished processing. And so again, essentially what happens once your data set's done processing is you'll get access to that metadata export, as well as your data set's going to begin to move over into the coding environment that I mentioned earlier. Again, the workbench side of the platform comes with this coding environment where you can code against the full text of the documents, the full documents themselves. And so again, here is the similar data set that I had created earlier. Social media and mental health data set, everything I could grab since 2015 there. So yeah, now hopping into the coding environment. If you're familiar with Jupyter Notebook, that's essentially what this is a Jupyter Notebook environment. There is support for coding in Python and coding in R. So if you're familiar with either of those two languages, this should be a pretty familiar space. What you'll see upon coming in here, I know I've got some extra folders in here, but you'll see the data folder, which is where all my data sets are going to go. We'll take a look at that in a second, as well as you'll see these getting started folders. We'll also take a look at these, but these are going to be the resources that we provide. So again, a little earlier, I had mentioned we provide some code as well as some other resources. You'll find all of that inside of those getting started folders. Always the first place I recommend kind of digging into if you are interested in using the platform. It's a great way to, get started and kind of familiarize yourself with at least how we interact with the data. So you don't have to do all of your coding from scratch. So we'll take a look at the data folder now. Again, this is where all your data sets are going to go. Everything transfers to your workbench automatically once you get the data sets created. So we can see here some data sets I've created in the past. Again, these are going to be folders full of XML documents. Do just be careful of clicking on the data set folders themselves. Jupyter just has a little bit of an issue trying to list out a million documents all on one page, pretty expectantly. So again, these are just going to be folders with a bunch of XML records in them. Nothing too exciting to look at, but again, getting started folders, we'll take a quick look in these, familiarize yourself with some of the resources that we have here. Inside of these folders, you'll have samples, visualization samples. These are going to be the code that I mentioned. So the regular samples we have here just to do some, pretty regular text mining processes, kind of what, we find a lot of people are doing. We'll take a look at one of these real quick. Document term matrix, for example, and we'll take another look at this one in just a second. But all the sample scripts are going to look very familiar. So it's pretty easy to familiarize yourself with them. Again, we know not everyone is super into doing the whole coding thing, so we try to make them as easy as possible. They are meant to run right out of the box. So as long as you're able to come in here and change the name of the data set you're looking at, it should be easy enough to restart and run it then, and at least get some analysis done. All the sample scripts are going to save automatically whatever output to files. So again, without knowing too much Python, I can come in here, change my data set and run this, and I'll get some results from the document term matrix here. But again, I also mentioned these as they're a good way to see how we interact with the data. So if you do want to write your own code, we've got kind of the structure here for pulling different tags out of the XML files. So if you want to work with the text of the documents in a way that we haven't provided, you at least have the structure for pulling the text from the documents themselves. And so again, the list that everyone will have available to them is the same as you see here. You'll have all of these available to you. You'll also have code for the visualizations that we took a look at earlier. So of course, again, with the visualization side of the platform, there's not a lot you can do to mess around with the visualizations themselves. You can't make a lot of changes to them. So of course, sometime down the road, someone's going to want to do that. So we've provided people with the code essentially behind those visualizations. So if you do want to do sentiment analysis, but you want to make tweaks to the language model that's being used, you've got the capability to do that within the code that we provide here. So just know that those are available. Then kind of last but not least in here, you'll find a manuals folder as well. This is going to be some guides. Some of you may have noticed we're kind of in a windowed environment here. This is primarily due to content security. Of course, again, the way the platform works is that we can give people access to do text mining on the platform, but the content itself has to stay on the platform due to agreements with content providers. So very importantly, export instructions and upload instructions are in here. If you do analysis, I'm sure you're going to want to get the analysis out of the platform at some point. So, yeah, a couple of guides, pretty important, export and upload in here as well. So yeah, now going back to our data set, essentially I want to take a look at the different, let's see here. I think I wanted to go to this one. I want to take a look at the different platforms mentioned in these documents to see, essentially, are there specific social media platforms being mentioned in conjunction with mental health across news articles. So again, here I've taken that document term matrix and I want to use that to take a look at a couple of different keywords that I've given it here. These are going to be the ones that it's searching for. So again, document term matrix is going to give me the counts of the words that I provide every time it finds it in one of my data sets. So social media, mental health, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. And again, with pretty little coding here, I then get my data frame. So we've got our GOID, or you can call it, your article ID. So one row per each article in my data set. I've got the published date attached to that, as well as the number of times each of these things is mentioned inside of those articles. So pretty easily then, I'm sure everyone can kind of see where this is going. I'm going to start adding those up per date, and we're going to track these over time. So then again, with my basic Python graphing skills, I've taken some of those terms and we're seeing how prevalent these different social media platforms are over time throughout my data set.
Brendan, we have, I think someone just raised their hand. Maybe. Was there any questions? I thought I saw a hand raised.
Yeah, I think if you have questions, you can put them in the Q&A and we should be able to see them.
Okay.
All right, I'll do a little bit more while we wait for that. But so yeah, of course, very interestingly here, we are seeing a couple of spikes, in particular in Twitter and Facebook. So if we want to zoom in on those a little bit, just to take a little bit closer look, we can kind of see those here. And then the kind of next thing I wanted to know is, is this impacting some of these, some of these companies, or is it as, are these being mentioned as a result of something the company has done? So like we had talked about earlier, you can upload data into this environment to do analysis alongside some of the TDM Studio content. So I took some meta stock, of course, Facebook and Instagram, uploaded that into the environment and just did a quick graph against the plots. So kind of interestingly, you can see with the second spike here, there does seem to be a pretty radical change in the meta stock directly afterwards. So again, if I were a full-time researcher, I could then dig a little bit deeper, maybe do like topic modeling or something on that spike to see what kinds of things are being talked about in the articles. Is the stock drop as a result of the spike or vice versa, and everything like that. So
we have a question. Do you need to do the coding or can you just use TDM Studio visualization?
So yeah, it's pretty dependent on your project. Of course, if you want to do something like sentence embeddings using different large language models, you'll have to use the coding side of the platform. But the visualization side of the platform is going to be good for, doing the three processes that you can find over there: geographic analysis, topic modeling, and sentiment analysis. Again, a little bit less flexibility on this side of the platform, but it's going to be much easier to use. So it's mostly up to what your project is and what you need to accomplish. But yeah. Yeah, now one of the other things we've been working on, like I had said already, this is kind of a walled off environment. One of the main things is that the internet access is pretty limited. So you can get access to large language models by uploading those to the studio, but things like OpenAI models, GPT in particular, have not been accessible from this environment. So we've recently launched a pilot where we're working with an internally hosted instance of GPT. Let me get a drink of water here. So now upon request, and eventually just automatically on users' workbenches, you'll get access to a couple of scripts that allow you to interface with that internally hosted instance of GPT. Couple details up here at the top about the different models you can use, the spend limit, the requests, and everything like that. But yeah, then we basically provide you with a key, and then you can prompt in just plain English against the documents that you've got in your data set. So in here I've asked it, what emotion best describes this document's perspective of social media? Please only give me one word. And we can see here some of the examples I've gotten here. So despair, concern, anxiety, ambivalence, distrust, reflective, inspiring, hope, despair, worry. So a little bit good, a little bit bad, but again, just really easily ask it a question in English, and I've just kind of graphed out some of the results you've gotten here. But this is something we have access to now if people are interested in it. This whole thing is moving very quickly, so we're trying to stay on top of it as much as possible. But
I'll put in the chat our TDM Studio inbox. So this is great if you have any questions at all about the product, or you need an onboarding, or if you'd like GPT added to your script, you could send an email and I will put it in the chat. Go
ahead. Yeah, and then I think we can get into questions, or Kristin, if there's anything else you would like to cover. That's kind of it for my side of the demo.
Yeah, so I see a couple people have already created an account, which is wonderful. Anytime you create an account, we'll receive a notification, and I'll send you a welcome email that will have additional training information, some like documents that you can look at, and then there'll be a link to schedule a one-on-one, and that's with Brandon. We always encourage people to schedule a one-on-one, just because as you can see within the product, there's a lot of different things you can do, and sometimes it helps just, getting that walkthrough again. So yeah, never hesitate to reach out, but we will definitely help you. We're not able to really do coding, but we're here to really support you and making sure that the product works for your research. Any questions? Is anyone working on a particular project or thinking about a project that you feel that TDM Studio could be useful? Okay. So again, feel free to reach out if you need anything, and I guess we can talk about Web of Science now.
Yeah, I'll jump right in. Hi, everyone. I'm Maureen Sico, and I'm your product sales manager for the Web of Science. As you know, you have full access to the Web of Science through your library website. And included in the Web of Science is also another tool that your library has added for researcher use, and it's our XML data. So it's the raw data that you're able to pull from for your specific project, and it is housed in TDM Studios. So right now, what I'm going to do is, now that you've met me, if you have any questions regarding the Web of Science as a whole, you can go to Anita Foster in the library, or you can come to me directly and we'd be glad to help you. The other thing is we have two team members from our data side, Stephen Mobley and Joe Brightbill, who are here on the call, and they're going to quickly walk you through the XML data and what it brings to your research at OSU. So hang on, let me see if Stephen and Joe are here. I thought I saw them a minute ago. Or did I lose them? There they are. Are they gonna come on? Technology is grand. Hold on. I can see Joe. Oh, you got to allow them to talk? Do we have to allow Joe and Stephen to be able to talk?
Yes. Can you hear me?
We can hear you now. Yeah.
Okay, you still
Hi,
can't
Joe.
see me because I don't know if you've allowed me to be seen. But
Okay.
yes, you did need to allow me to talk. I got a message that said,
Oh, okay. I didn't know it was me. So, okay, sorry.
or somebody did. I don't know who did it, but
Okay,
the message came through anyway.
good, good.
I could turn my camera on if I can, but I didn't get anything to let me turn my camera on. So
Can't tell you on that one. Okay, well, I'll keep working on it. You just go ahead and jump in and then we can get through this portion so everybody's up to speed.
yeah, I mean, I don't have much further to say, nothing really to present, just to highlight that the data's there. I don't know to what extent anybody mentioned it earlier since I joined a little bit later, but basically the Web of Science data is also loaded into TDM Studio, but the functionality is limited compared to some of the other data sets. So you have the ability to basically use it as a means to export slices of that WAS data. So if you're doing research and you need scientific publication data on a set of papers related to a certain topic like malaria or something, you should be able to go in, run a search on malaria, get the results, export those results, and then sort of within the XML output that you export from TDM Studio itself is a node that has the full Web of Science XML for all of those records, straight out of Web of Science as it would appear if you got the actual XML feed. And then you can do whatever you would normally do with that once you've exported it on your end. And the XML contains basically everything you would see in Web of Science if you're familiar with Web of Science on a full record view. So if you're running a search in Web of Science, you find a record, you pull the record up. Basically everything that you see there, you'll be able to see in the records that you export out of TDM Studio. So, title, journal information, author information, institution information, funding data, category data, all of that stuff.
Great. Does anyone have any questions? And Stephen, now that you can speak, we think, out loud, do you have anything to add on the data for this team?
No, I think Joe summarized it pretty well with regard to TDM, but we're definitely here in case anyone has any questions about the functionality.
Okay, sure.
The data itself. Yeah.
Good. Christian Blanco in the business school is part of the TDM team. He's a great user of both XML as well as TDM. So if you have internal questions and by chance you're familiar with Christian, or you want to get a hold of him and ask internally what he's doing with the data, you can surely do that. You should know also that the XML data is a product that majority of the BTAA universities are utilizing. So in fact, Christian had a project he was working on with someone at Northwestern who also had access to their own data set, same exact data, but they were collaborating with each other on a project. So keep that in the back of, in your back pocket as you're utilizing these tools, that some of the other schools have them, especially in the XML or with TDM, and you're able to collaborate in that route as well. So does anybody have any questions before we all disperse and go back to our day jobs? Everybody okay? I don't see anything in the chat. Do you see anything, Kristin?
No, I think we're good. Brandon had just answered a question in the chat, so if anyone wants to take a look at that. But yeah, thank you so much for all attending. Again, Ohio State has a university's license to TDM Studio, so if you know others that have research projects or may want to look at the tool, feel free to share the create account instructions with them. And then again, never hesitate to reach out.
Okay, Kristin, OSU, are we good? We've got two Kristins, so we gotta make sure OSU and Clarivate. We're good to go. Or Jade, is it okay? We're gonna end this then?
Yep, I can go ahead and end it once everybody.
Okay, great. Thanks, everybody. And please holler with any questions. Sorry, Jade, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Oh, you're fine.
Good.
I had nothing else to say. We're good.
Okay, thanks.
Thank
Bye-bye,
you.
everyone.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone.